influences. In addition, this book stands on the shoulders of the many scholars who have produced major studies about the broader social and historical context of modern American psychiatry. They include Ronald Bayer, Ann Harrington, David Healy, Ellen Herman, David Hertzberg, Elizabeth Lundbeck, George Macari, Mark Macaulay, John Metzel, Richard Knoll, Charles Rosenberg, Andrew Scull, Robert Spitzer, Michael Staub, and Andrea Tone. None of them is responsible for the ways in which I have used their work. I am particularly indebted to Christopher Lane, who generously provided me with his files on the correspondence about the development of the DSM-3 and DSM-3R that are found in the Melvin Sabshin Library and Archive of the American Psychiatric Association Foundation in Washington, D.C. I am also grateful to Dina Gorland, the librarian at the archive, for granting me permission to use this material. David Hertzberg graciously sent me the data on psychotropic drug use in the 1950s and 1960s that he extracted from the National Disease and Therapeutic Index. David Mechanic's comments on an earlier draft of the manuscript greatly improved the final product. Michael First and Peter Zakar kindly responded to my queries about the DSM process. Matt McAdam, Will Krause, and Kyle Kretzer at Johns Hopkins University Press provided invaluable support. Finally, Carrie Watterson was a superb copy editor. 1. Diagnosing mental illness. Diagnoses from the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders, DSM, have become part of our culture. Environmental activist Greta Thunberg is widely known to have Asperger syndrome. One of her adversaries, Donald Trump, is commonly seen as displaying a narcissistic personality disorder. The singer Mariah Carey has discussed her struggles with bipolar disorder, the same condition dramatized in the main character in Homeland, Carrie Mathison. Lady Gaga has spoken about her struggles with post-traumatic stress disorder, PTSD. TV mobster Tony Soprano seeks treatment for panic attacks, while his son is suspected of having attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, ADHD. Susanna Kaysen, the author of the best-selling memoir Girl Interrupted, discovered she had borderline personality disorder while reading the DSM-3 in her local bookstore. Many patients enter therapy already knowing what diagnosis they expect to receive. The centrality of DSM diagnoses is a new phenomenon, arising only after the third edition of the manual was published in 1980. Although psychiatry had been a pervasive presence in American culture since World War II, specific mental disorders were not. Instead, as a Life magazine story summarized in 1957, the field permeates our whole way of life, at work, in love, in sickness, and in health. The most prominent conceptions of mental illness at the time were broad notions such as psychoses, neuroses, and nerves, or psychoanalytic processes such as Oedipal or inferiority complexes, repression, and the id, ego, and superego. For example, the first sentence of Saul Bellows' Herzog, published 1964, reads, "If I am out of my mind, it's all right with me." Similarly, gang members in West Side Story, 1957, sing about one of their associates. "It's just his neurosis that ought to be curbed. He's psychologically disturbed. We're disturbed. We're disturbed. We're the most disturbed, like we're psychologically disturbed." In the same vein, tranquilizing drugs, such as Miltown and Valium, were promoted in the 1950s and 1960s for the patient with vague symptoms, nervous and distressed under the burden of unsolved problems, who finds release from anxiety and restoration of emotional composure. Specific diagnoses as we know them today had little importance in either professional practice or cultural consciousness. Before the 1980s, psychiatric diagnoses were inextricable from the experiences of particular individuals. Clinicians viewed mental problems as being closely intertwined with people's psychosocial backgrounds and circumstances, and therefore impossible to isolate from personal interpretations, identities, socialization, relationships, and life events. This view of mental